All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Scott Thompson, and we are here for our Stock Investing for Beginners webcast. Appreciate you taking some time out of your busy week to be here with me today. The bell has just sounded and the market is closed. And want to give a shout out to Jay Richardson and Robert and Gary and Simone and Sharon and who else is here today? And Life in the Fast Lane. I appreciate you taking some time to be here with me today. Have Connie in the chat. You can follow me and Connie on x.com at Scott Thompson CS or Connie Hill CS. Post some content there that you can look at. I'm excited to be here with you today. I'm going to go through, many people have asked, how do you select a stock and how do you determine, if you have stocks that have multiple buy signals, how do you determine which one to buy? And so we're going to fly through some the S&P 100 stocks today. We're going to play a bit of a game. So before we jump in, though, let me give you our important information. Remind everybody that the presentation today is for informational purposes only, not a recommendation of any stock or strategy. We are going to be talking about the two green arrow strategy that we use as our, paper money uh, investment strategy. We are using the paper money software. That's different than the live trading. There are some significant differences there, so be aware of that. We will be talking about stop orders, and there's no guarantee that the execution of a stop order will be at or near the stop price. Be aware also that any investing involves risk, and including the loss of principal and past performance is no guarantee of future results. So again, we're going to jump in because we've got a lot to cover today. Let me share my screen. I want to fill out a little Word doc here with you. So the game today is there a two green arrow buy signal. So what we're going to be going through is kind of the daily routine that I've used for years when I'm trying to determine, if I've got capital to invest or if I've got, some time to look through my watch list, the process of doing that. So, I start off with that question. It's really simple. Is there a two green arrow buy signal? Let me define that for us. Those of you that may be new, we have two indicators that we use. We use a 50-day simple moving average and we use a MACD histogram. And so we're looking for green arrows on those. So very first thing is the price above the 50, the rising 50 SMA, simple moving average. Okay, that's question number one. And is the MACD green? So those are the questions that we want to look at. Now, the process that I use, and I mentioned that we're going to go through all 100 stocks. I think there's actually 99 now on the list, but the S&P 100 is the 100 biggest companies in the S&P or the U.S. markets, and we're going to go through all of them today. And I'm going to show you how to do that so fast that you're going to be blown away. So what the process in order to do it quickly, I'm going to be looking at basically one thing. If the MACD is red, done. That's really it. We'll go through a couple examples very slow, but then we're going to go through a blitz, all right? And we're going to have 5 to 10 seconds to identify the buy signal or not and jot the symbol down. So that's what I want you guys to do today with me here. If you're watching the recording, you can do this. You can pause it if you need to. But let me go through kind of how I do it and to give you an idea. So we're going to kind of categorize this in two columns. So like if you have a blank piece of paper or get a blank piece of paper and just, create a little T chart and do two green arrows 3+ days ago or two green arrows within 1 or 2 days. Those are the two columns that we're going to look at. I'm not going to fill this out while we're going through this because there just won't be time for me to do that. I've done through this here. Gary's asking a great question, not a dumb question. Gary says, how do you get the two green arrows? I'll describe that here in a second when we look at our example. But set up your paper, two green arrows 3 days ago, two green arrows 1 or 2 days ago, and then I'll give you a couple example test runs, and then we're going to fly through the S&P 100. Okay, so let me go over to my Thinkorswim, And we're going to be looking at, the S&P 100 is the watch list over here. You should know how to pull that up. You can just go to the public list here, S&P 100. That's what we've done. All right. I've sorted it in this example from, the end of the alphabet to the beginning. I've linked up the watch list here with my chart. So when I click on a symbol, it'll change. All right. And we're going to look at the 3-month chart just because then it's a little easier to see everything. All right. So here's the game. All right. If I was doing my routine, I'm looking right here, right side of the chart at the MACD, and I can see that it's green. And so then my eyes would go up here and I would ask, is the price above the moving average? In this case, it is. And I'm also kind of looking at the moving average to see if it's rising or not. If I can't tell that it's rising, or if I can't tell the stock's trending up, then I'm going to put probably a question mark. So this is how I would do this for XOM. I would look at MACD and I think, well, about 7 days ago, you see that green arrow here. So Gary, what causes the green arrows? When the MACD crosses the zero line, we get a green arrow. When the price closes above the moving average, we get a green arrow. Those are what triggers those green arrows. And then we're going to be focusing here on the right side. And all we need to know is there a two green arrow signal still on the chart? Okay. And the green arrows are green until they turn red. All right. So this is how I would do this. If I was going through this little exercise with you, which I'm doing and we're going to do, is I would probably count on the MACD. It's like, well, that MACD gave a green arrow or the buy signal about 7 days ago. So this is how I would write this on my little notepad. I would do this. I would go in here and I'd put XOM plus 7 because that was about 7 days ago. All right. And then I'd go back to my chart and I would just arrow down. Once you're in here, if I just click my down arrow, it'll move to Walmart. And I look at Walmart and I say to myself, okay, is the MACD green? Answer is yes. Is the stock above a rising moving average? Well, this is one of those scenarios where it's really hard to tell if that moving average is rising. It looks like it's falling, in my opinion. The stock looks like it did close just barely above the moving average. So technically, that's still a green arrow. But because of the moving average, this is how I would write this. Technically, yes, it has two green arrows. We got a green arrow yesterday on the moving average, but the moving average isn't rising. So this is how I would note that on my, and I'd probably put it over here. I just put Walmart and then I just do a question mark because it looks like it has two green arrows, but I don't want to take the time right this second to determine whether or not it's a rising moving average or not. And so, and this is taking a lot longer to do going back and forth from the chart, but we'll go through this much faster here in a minute. So I've looked at Walmart, then I would, arrow down and I would say, okay, I'm looking at the MACD. So you guys help me out right here. Is the MACD green or red? So someone chat in so I know that I can tell you're seeing what I'm seeing here. Is the MACD green or red on WFC? I know that takes a second to where you guys can chat in, but if the MACD is, yeah, if the MACD is red, then guess what? We're done. Okay. And I would go to Verizon and I'd say, okay, on Verizon, I have a green arrow on the MACD. I have 1, 2, 3, about 5 days ago. Moving average looks like it's rising. So I would go to my paper. All right. And I would type in VZ plus 5. That makes sense? Okay, before we start, okay, we're gonna switch the flip the switch here. We're gonna start at the top of the list. We're gonna alphabetize this starting with Apple, and we're just gonna fly through here. And I'm gonna give us about 5 to 10 seconds. It'll be 10 seconds here at the beginning, and then it'll drift toward 5 because once you start doing this, you don't need 5 seconds here. Okay. All right. And I can see, I know some of you are like, well, why don't we just scan for it? I see that post there. And you can do the scan. I'm just old school. I learned how to do this way when we didn't have the scans, and I was looking for my specific buy signal. And so I'm gonna, you know, give us a little bit of a countdown here, and I won't do that all the way through, but I just want to go. I'm going to click Apple in just a moment, and then all you have to do is determine if there's a two green arrow buy signal or not, and how long ago it was. Because what we're going to do when we're done with this is go through the stocks that have, like a buy signal within 1 or 2 days and determine which of a couple of those we want to trade today. Okay, everybody ready? All right, here we go. Apple. So you're looking at the chart, you're looking at the right side. Usually I'll start with the MACD. I look at the prices above the moving average, and that was 10 seconds. So jot the symbol down. ABBV, valid buy signal or no? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Next. ABT, valid buy signal or no? How long ago? So you don't have to chat in. I want you to chat. You guys jot down the symbols that have the buy signals. Next. Okay, valid buy signal ACN. 3, 2, 1. Adobe, valid buy signal or no? 3, 2, 1. AIG, valid buy signal or no? 4, 3, 2, 1. AMD, valid buy signal or no? Now this one's interesting. MACD's green, but you have to go up and look at the stock. Stock price above the moving average or no? 2, 1. Amgen, valid buy signal or no on Amgen? How long ago? Okay, jot the symbols down. Even if they're really old buy signals like on Amgen, this one does have a valid buy signal. It's just old because I want you to get through the practice. Okay, AMT, valid buy signal or no? Okay, be careful on this one. Remember our rule is above a rising moving average. 3, 2, 1. Amazon. Stock's bouncing off what looks like a support level, but the MACD's red. Valid buy signal or no? 2, 1. AVGO. Valid buy signal or no? This one's easy. Red moving at or red MACD, we're done. Next, AXP. Red MACD, done. Okay, I'm going to go a little faster still. Boeing, red MACD, done. Bank of America, red MACD, we're done. BIIB, green MACD, stocks above the rising moving average. How long ago was this buy signal? And when I'm asking how long ago the buy signal was, I'm just counting back when whatever the last arrow was to go green, how long ago it went green. So this was about 6 days ago, BIIB gave a green arrow. Okay. BK doesn't come up. Booking. 3, 2, 1. BLK. Valid buy signal or no? 3, 2, 1. BMY. Valid buy signal or no? How long ago? This one goes on the other side. This one goes on the 1 or 2 day one. You guys see that? Okay. Next one. BRKB. Red MACD, done. Citigroup. Red arrows on the MACD and the price today, not a buy signal. Caterpillar. Green MACD, red arrow on the stock price. CHTR. Above the price or above the moving average, but the MACD's red. We're done. Okay. Going to speed up a little more again. Okay, valid buy signal on CL or no? Red MACD, done. Comcast. MACD's green, price is above the moving average. The moving average looks like it started rising maybe 5, 6 days ago. I would say this is a valid buy signal. COF. MACD's red. Done. COP. Stock's above the moving average. Moving average looks like it's rising. We bought this a few days ago. MACD turned green about 6, 7, 8 days ago. So not a new buy signal, but valid green arrows. Next, Costco. Now, this is another one. To me, it looks like the moving average is falling, so I would say this is not a valid buy signal, even though we have two green arrows. CRM. This one might be a question mark. The moving average does look like it's rising. The stock is certainly making higher highs and higher lows. Green arrow on the MACD today. This one goes in that 1 or 2 day column. All right. Cisco. MACD's red. We're done. CVS. MACD's red. CVX. Chevron. MACD's green. Stocks above a rising moving average. Valid buy signal. John Deere. MACD red. We're done. DHR. Valid buy signal or no? How long ago? 2 day. MACD's green today. Stock's making a new high today. Disney. MACD's been green a long time. Stock went above the moving average about 8, 9 days ago. MACD or moving average looks like it's rising. And I would say that's a valid buy signal on this one as well. Just older. All right, Dow Jones. MACD's red, or sorry, green. Stock's above the price, but the moving average looks like it's falling, not a buy signal. MACD's green, but the stock's below the moving average. Done. EMR, red MACD. Ford. This one's been kind of choppy and sideways. MACD's green today. Looks like the moving average is kind of flat. This one, I'd probably put a question mark on it. FedEx. Green moving average. Green MACD. Moving average looks kind of flat. This would be a question mark. GD. General Dynamics. Nice trend. MACD's red. Done. GE. MACD's red. Done. Gilead. This one looks like it broke resistance maybe 4 or 5 days ago. Green arrows across the board. Moving average is rising. Valid signal. Little bit late. GM. MACD's red. We're done. Google. MACD's red. We're done. Google, the other one. MACD's red. We're done. GS. Prices below the moving average. Done. Home Depot. MACD's red. We're done. Honeywell. MACD's red. We're done. So one of the things, hopefully by this point, you're getting the idea of how fast you can determine whether there's a valid buy signal based on that set of rules we're trading. Below the moving average, done. Below the moving average, done. Into it. Older buy signal went above the moving average several days ago. MACD's been green forever. The moving average does look like it's rising. I would say this is a valid buy signal. It's just a little bit older. Okay. Johnson & Johnson. Green arrows on this one? Yes. How long ago? 3 days ago. So that one has 3 days ago. JP Morgan, MACD's red, we're done. MACD's red, we're done. Coca-Cola, moving average is rising. MACD went green, when? 2 day, right? 2 day, put that one on the right side column. Coca-Cola, below the moving average, done. Above the moving average, Eli Lilly. This one's really expensive. We don't look at this one very often just because our portfolio is so small, but this has a valid buy signal. Nice breakout today. Green arrows on the MACD and the moving average is rising. So that one's a buy signal within 2 days. LMT, MACD's red, we're done. Lowe's, MACD's red, we're done. MasterCard, MACD's red, we're done. McDonald's, MACD's red, we're done. Mondelez, okay. This one, again, moving average slightly rising, probably kind of choppy and sideways. MACD is green today. Technically a valid 2 green arrow signal. So you could write that one down. That one happened today. So we put it on our list of stocks that have a new buy signal, and then we'd evaluate when we're done here, right? MDT, moving average rising, new highs today. MACD was green about 7, 8 days ago. So that is a valid buy signal, just a little bit old. MET. MACD's red, we're done. Meta, red. 3M, red. Green arrow on the on Altria Group, but price is below the moving average, done. MRK, green arrows on the moving average, green arrows on the MACD. Big gap up today, probably some good news. That's a valid buy signal based on our 2 green arrow plan. Write that one down. That one's about 5, 6 days old. Morgan Stanley, closed below the moving average today, not a buy signal. Microsoft, MACD's red. NEE, stocks below the moving average. Netflix. So this one's moving average looks like it's still falling. So even though the 2 green arrows are green, or the green arrows are green, Uh, I would say that's not a valid buy signal. Nike, below the moving average. Red arrow on the MACD on NVIDIA. Oracle, red arrow on the MACD. Pepsi, green arrow on the MACD, green arrow on the stock. Moving average kind of flat. Stock's been choppy, trading in the channel. You know, technically two green arrows, but again, not really that rising moving average that we're looking for. PFE, MACD was green a long time ago. Stock went above the moving average several days ago. Moving average is rising. So I'd say this one's valid. It's just an old one. PG, green, red MACD. PM, red MACD. PayPal, red MACD. Stocks below the moving average on Qualcomm. RTX, red MACD. Starbucks, red MACD. Southern, below the price or below the moving average. SPG, MACD's red. AT&T, stock looks like it's above the price. The moving average started rising maybe a day or two ago. MACD's green about 6-7 days. So AT&T technically two green arrows on it. Target, green arrow, win. Today, gapped up, looks like it gapped down on earnings and rallied all day, it looks like. So that's a valid buy signal today. We already own this one in our paper money. TMO, MACD's red. T-Mobile, okay, prices above the moving average yesterday and today. MACD's green. Moving average looks like it's probably starting to rise or sideways. This is one of those that's a question mark in my book. Tesla, below the moving average. TXN, below the moving average. UNH, below the moving average. UNP, above the moving average. Moving average is rising. MACD went green. How long ago? 2 days. So that's a +2, right? UPS, below the moving average. MACD's red. We're almost done here. USB, MACD's red. Visa, MACD's red. Verizon, you know, green arrow on the moving average, green arrow on the MACD about 5 days ago. That one's a valid buy signal. 5 days, left side column. Okay, Wells Fargo, green arrows or red arrow on both, not a buy signal. Walmart, again, we kind of looked at this one already, kind of sideways. And ExxonMobil, 7 days ago, MACD turned green. Okay, so now hopefully you have a list, okay, and I do this manually on paper. So I literally did this morning, and I wrote down, +3, +5, +1, +1, and I got about 9 stocks. Okay, I got about 9 stocks that had a buy signal today. So, and then I see some questions in there. There was a question about Netflix. Why not Netflix? Jay Richardson saying, Scott, when is a valid buy signal just too old to really consider? And so let me kind of talk about those as we look at the number one. So these are the number ones that I saw. Okay, TGT, buy signal today. KO, buy signal today. CRM, buy signal today. DHR, buy signal today. And these aren't recommendations. These are just, does it have a 2 green arrow status on it right now, right? Let's see, BMY, did we look at that one? BMY, buy signal today. AXP. So that one was a buy signal earlier. You can see it was above the moving average. The MACD actually was green, but that one's red. So this is not a valid buy signal anymore. It was this morning. ABT, green arrow on the MACD today. Apple, we talked about briefly. Apple is above the moving average, and it looks like it may have closed above that resistance level too. In our paper money account, I do try to avoid like Netflix and Apple and Costco and Nvidia and Tesla because we use those in our top 10, fractional share strategy for our strategy number 2 that we're doing. So I don't really buy these with our 2 green arrows, but that one does have a valid 2 green arrow buy signal on it today. And then Mondelez was the last one that I had, green arrows today. All right, now let's go back and look at a couple of questions. Then I want to go through and look at these stocks that have the buy signal today and then give you some ideas or some things that traders look for to determine whether they should buy one or the other, okay? Now, there was a question about why not Netflix. Okay, so Netflix is a good question. Now, our purpose, who was asking this? Jim. Our rule, okay, is to buy a stock that is in an uptrend, and we want to hold that stock until that trend ends. And in order to determine whether or not there's a valid buy signal, we just wrote down a rule that said the moving average has to be rising. So if we're looking at the moving average, and if we take a bigger look at it, if I look at the left side of the chart that was way up here at 90-ish, and now it's down here at 74.50, it's pretty evident that that trend has been down. Okay. Now, if I zoom in here, I can see the stock closed above the moving average this day. Let me shrink this down over here and I'll show you exactly what to look for. So we closed above the moving average here, and the MACD had been green forever. So this day, right there, where it closed above the moving average, that technically is the first two green arrow signal. But if I put my cursor there, now look at the number right here. That number 75.47, that's the value of the moving average on that day. If I go back a day, it was at 75.67. You see that? Look at that number, 75.67. The next day, 75.47. The moving average has gone down. It is not going up. And so that is not a valid buy signal based on our rules. Again, we got a buy signal over here. And if I put my cursor here, now you'll have to go over to look at this number. It's right below share. Okay. That number's at 74.91. The day before, it was at 75.01. So again, the moving average fell 10 cents and it's not going up. And today, the moving average is at 74.59. Yesterday, it was at 74.64. So again, the moving average is not rising. That's why this is not a valid buy signal based on our rule set. Now, that being said, those of you that are technical traders might look at this and say, well, Scott, you're an idiot. You may not say that because you're nicer, but you may look at that and say, Scott, what are you saying? That stock broke resistance today. And it did. So okay, one of the purposes of doing this, you could go through and say to yourself, you know what? I like that rising moving average rule, but I have a caveat. If I have two green arrows and I can see that a resistance level has been broken, I'm going to say that's a valid buy signal for me. That makes sense? So as you go through like this exercise with me today, and you do it on your own with your own rules, as you go through that, you'll discover things like this, and you say, you know what? I like the rising moving average, but this is a breakout, and this is a valid entry signal for technical traders. Totally valid, to buy that today. Then they might set their stop down below one of these support levels. But that's why it's not a buy signal on ours. All right. Jay Richardson says, Scott, when is a valid buy just too old to really consider? Well, I go back and forth on that, Jay Richardson. Again, in our simple plan, I've stated many times, the green arrows are green until they turn red. So the hard answer or the set answer to your question is it's never too old. You know what? I've seen so many times where, the moving average was green and the MACD was green. And that period of time, let's look at let's look at ABT, because this one's making a new high. And I want to go ahead and do a couple trades here before we run out of time, and then we'll come back and answer some more questions because I want to talk about this, but I want to give you an example, and ABT looks like a good one here. So how do we buy ABT? Well, we set our stop 1% below the moving average. That's 97.94. The market's closed, so we're going to put a limit order at the close. We're going to right click, buy custom with stop. And we're just going to put a buy order there at 114.43. We're going to set our stop. We said our stop was going to go at 97.94. And we're going to invest up to about $500, so we can probably do 4 shares. We'll lock that up. Okay, and they'll make the stop good till canceled. We'll hit confirm and send. and we're about $457. No guarantee to get filled at 97.94. That's just going to trigger a market order, and it could be filled significantly lower than that, particularly if it gaps. Okay, so let's put that in our two green arrow. So we've got an order on ABT. Okay, now this one happened today. So, you know, uh, Jay Richardson, and I think Barbara asked this as well in the past. So on ABT, let me just go through this little exercise with you. So here is a period, okay? This whole period looks like the moving average started rising, you know, Jim or I think it's Jay Richardson. If we look at the number right there, like that day, the moving average was at 89.39. When the MACD went green, it was at 89.66. So 89.39, 89.66. The moving average is rising. So right here is a valid buy signal based on our rules. Now your question was, you know, how old does it have to be in order to not really consider it anymore? Okay, and I have two parts to this answer. Number one is our rule basically says it's never too old. If the arrows are green, they're green. Now let me explain why. Okay, I'm going to draw a little box around this valid purchase period. Okay, which I think is right through here. Okay, right through here, like if we bought it the day we got the buy signal, the closing price was at $100.68. And if we bought it at the absolute worst time, probably up there at the high, was at 110.04. Okay, so 110.04 down to about, so 110.04 down to that $100. So between $100 and 110 is our valid buy signal. Now, if we move the chart forward, now we don't have a valid buy signal anymore. MACD's red. Okay, and it wasn't until right here, you guys see that? Let me change my drawing tool again to my arrow. So right there is the next valid buy signal. And if we bought at the close on the next buy signal, so we looked at that whole period where the MACD was green and we felt like, oh, this is too old, too old, too old. But by the time I got my next buy signal, which was right there, the closing price was 110.91. So what do you notice? What do you notice about the next buy opportunity versus the last valid buy signal period? And this is not always the case, but often this is happening. So the answer to my question I just asked was what happened? Well, the next buy signal was at a higher price than the worst time during that last buy signal period. Okay? So that's it's interesting when you look at a number of stocks, and I've done this many times over the years, when you're using signal-based buy signals, particularly indicator-based buy signals, the next time that indicator-based buy signal happens, you might have to buy at a price that was higher than the whole time when the last valid buy signal was. Okay, so it's a great question. This tells me you guys are thinking, and I love that. Let's see. Barbara says, how much does the slope of the moving average have to start to slope to be two green arrows? Well, literally, Barbara, the way we've defined our rules is it just has to be the moving average has to be higher today than it was yesterday. Then we say, okay, the trend has started back up. You know, because there's a couple things going on. Number one, we're not setting our stop like right below today's low, are we? We're setting our stop, you know, below an intermediate period moving average. So that initial stop is going to be 8%, 10%, maybe even 15% away from our initial purchase price. So, you know, whether it's up 4 days or 3 days or 10 days, you know, at least in my experience looking at thousands of charts over the years, and again, this is one of those things that past performance doesn't guarantee future results. But the point is if we get right down to brass tacks, if the moving average is higher today than it was yesterday, and it has the two green arrows, that's a valid buy signal for our rules. Okay. All right. Let's see. All right. So what was another stock? You know, we've got about 10 minutes left, or let's go 6 minutes. We've got about 6 minutes left. I have my list of stock symbols that have the one day green arrows, but you guys chat into me. Which ones do you want to look at? And we'll look at as many of these as we can before we have to wrap up today. But which ones of those ones that you jotted down as we flew through the S&P 100, and I hope you think, wow, we did it. We did that very quickly. I can do this. That's what I want you to walk away from today. But so Verizon, okay, Robert says Verizon. Let's take a look at Verizon, VZ. So Verizon. Now, so as we're looking at stocks to consider, let me show you, or I'll go through some of the lists. Now, MACD's green, so valid green arrow, MACD looks, or moving average is rising. This is a valid buy signal based on our rules. Now, why would I choose Verizon, or why might a trader choose Verizon over another stock? Well, let me give you one thing to look at. So Verizon, I might say to myself, well, it looks like we had a lot of resistance or trouble getting above this price over here. And look at that. Today we closed above that really strong multi-hit resistance point. Looks like for those of you technicians out there, we might have an inverted head and shoulders. Okay. And we got a breakout today. That's a valid entry signal on Verizon based on our rules, based on a breakout entry rule set, based on a price pattern, inverted head and shoulders breakout. Those are all valid entries. Now, that doesn't mean that stock's going to be profitable for us, because the trend could change tomorrow, right? But the point is this is a valid buy signal. And Barbara and everybody else that's here, one of the things that's really interesting is when I looked at this, I had so many what I would call a yeah, but. Well, if I buy it today, well, yeah, but what if it goes down tomorrow? Then I'm going to be losing some money. Welcome to the market. Well, I can see it broke out, but what if I buy it? Yeah, but what if it goes sideways? Well, then I'm going to have my capital tied up for a little while. Welcome to the market. Okay, what if it goes up tomorrow? Well, then I'm going to be profitable. Okay, welcome to the market, right? I can't control anything here. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. All I know that's going to happen, all I can control is I can determine my buy signal, and we've got it here. So we'll place a trade on Verizon, and I can put my stop. In this case, I think this is a good stop rule. There's no perfect stop rule, but 45.09. So we're going to go right click, buy custom with stop. Okay, closing price 49.36 today. Stop the moving average values at 45.09. Okay, about $3, $4 away. We can invest up to $500. So let's go about 10 shares. And then I hit confirm and send. Kind of double check everything. My investment here, the buying power, basically is drawn down about 493 bucks. Purchase price, limit order at 49.36, stop order at 45.09, no guarantee to get filled at 45.09, and we send the order off. Okay, but the takeaway on this one is if this stock was below the moving average, it would probably take second or third or fourth place compared to something else that had a buy signal. Okay, MRK, another one you guys tatted in. MRK, valid buy signal today, yes or no? Well, moving average is rising. MACD is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days green. Let's take a look at a longer term chart, a little bit longer. So this is another thing is people, if you're not familiar with the trend, MRK has been trading sideways a long time, broke this 124 resistance, kind of tested it a couple times, traded sideways and up a little bit here, gapped up, probably on some good news today, I would guess. How do we know? Well, I know because I'm looking at the price gapping up, and usually that means it's good news. But let's switch the gadget. Let's take a look at live news, and let's type in MRK. See if we can see what the news was. Okay. So, well, this might have it in there. There might be some others that came out here. Merck just raised stakes. So it looks like there was some news on there. We're not going to take time to go through it all. Now, a couple of things here with this one. In Moon Ninja, I see your question. Let me finish this thought on Merck and give it now. How many of you, let's be honest, how many of you feel uncomfortable buying Merck so far above the moving average after such a big gap up? Okay, be honest. I do. I recognize this as a valid buy signal. Okay. And the stock could gap up again tomorrow. Again, we don't know. Okay. But what have we seen? Technically, what would we look for? All right. Anytime you get a big gap up like this, okay, I'm going to draw some lines in here. The high of the day before the gap and the low of the gap day, those are some areas that technical traders will watch. All right. Another area is halfway through a big candle. Okay. Halfway through a big candle is what they call a support one level. So right now I have about two main areas that I'm watching here. And one thing that's very common after a breakout or after gaps up, there's usually some consolidation. Not always, okay, not always, but some consolidation. So some traders would think, well, I'm going to set a limit order to buy this if it pulls back into that 150 range. Some people might say I'm going to put an order to buy it if it pulls back into the 144.90 range. If it closes below this gap level, gaps that start to fill tend to fill. Okay. And what I mean by that is not all gaps fill. Okay. That's a myth. Not all gaps fill. But I've seen many times where if a stock closes below that gap open or the low of that gap open candle, if it closes below that, there's a pretty good chance. You know, what is pretty good? I don't know, better than 50%, that it's going to fill that gap. But if it holds this gap level, that will usually become the new support. Okay. So, you can decide how you want to buy this. We're going to do it this way. We're going to go in with one share right now and we'll set our stop way down here. It feels very uncomfortable, but that's our rule. Okay. So we're going to go in there with one share here. Okay. Buy custom with stop. Let's shrink this down again. We're going to go in there at 152.20, our stop. And then the moving average value today is at 124.82. All right. And we're just going to do one share at that level. Okay. Again, we've talked about how a stop works. Green arrows, send that off. But I'm also going to set another order basically near the open today. So I'm going to right click right here, buy custom with stop. And we're going to use that same stop, 142.82. Good till canceled. And if it pulls back, then we'll add another share, and that will basically complete our $500 order. That makes sense? So, we have a limit order for tomorrow. If this opens, 152.50 or lower, it'll fill. If it pulls back, which is kind of expected, that's what we expect, then that order will fill for us. Oh, I gotta set that stop. So that one's not right. What was it? So 125.47. So I'm going to move this one down. Okay, 125.47. We'll edit that. 125.47. Good till cancel. Okay, so now those stops are in the same spot. All right. So we are basically out of time here. Jay Richardson, I'm uncomfortable placing the stop below the 50 period moving average. Yeah, I understand. Nothing wrong with that. You can set up some new rules. Moon Ninja, why do you but above not below got more profit? So Moon Ninja, I'm not sure I understand your question, but the reason that we're placing the stop below the moving average rather than closer to the price action is we're trying to do an intermediate to longer term trade. And in order to do that, you have to let the stock fluctuate a little bit. We don't have a price target per se. Uh, we try to stay in the trend as long as possible. All right. All right. So I think that's got through the questions there. If you had some others, go ahead and chat those in either now and then I can address them in the YouTube comments. I also want to remind everybody, if you're in the Phoenix area, this next September 19th, we have a market drive in the Scottsdale area. It's going to be a fantastic event. We'll treat you some lunch and everything there. Great event called a market drive. You can click on it here to learn more. This is our coaching live events. So let me chat this in here for you. But check that out. And then if you are new to our class, if you go to our Trader Talks webcast page, you can see our 8 lessons that we just finished again. But our 8 lessons are down here under the stock investing basics. This is just the 8 lessons. It's not everything else. If you want to see everything else that we do, go to the playlist, and then you can scroll down here, and we're just stock investing for beginners, and we've got about, I think this is episode 60 now that we're on after that. So hopefully this was helpful for you today, everybody. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone.